Let's say you start a new project in Resolve. What do you do about the color management? There are actually two color management systems in Resolve. One is display referred and one is scene referred. And we'll discuss the differences between those two. Now before I do that, I do want to mention there is footage that's included with this series. If you right mouse button click in the Media tab, you can go to Import Media and take a look. There are two movies included in the footage folder within the project files folder, which you can download. One movie was shot with an Alexa LF, and that's stored in the ProRes format. There's a second movie that was shot on a Red One Mysterium camera, and that's in the RAW RED format. Feel free to import those if you'd like. I'll cancel for now. So before you get too far in your project, you do need to think about your color management. Again, there's a display referred system and a scene referred system. So what's the difference? A display referred color management system is dependent on the color space and gamma space the display you're working with can support. In this case, the user, you, has to become the color manager. So you have to make sure the color is consistent between the various Resolve tabs and is consistent when it comes time to render out. This is actually the system that has been used for many years in post-production and visual effects. The disadvantage of display referred is it can be difficult to manage multiple color spaces. For example, if you bring in footage shot by different cameras, such as the Alexa and the RED cameras, you have to make sure that they get the correct color space interpretation. It can also be difficult if you need to render out to multiple color spaces. For example, maybe your project demands that you render out for HDTV as well as a digital cinema projector. To solve this problem of a display referred system, a lookup table, or what's called a LUT, is often required. And a LUT, LUT, is a color space transform matrix. In other words, the LUT will transform from one color space to another color space. LUTs are very powerful, but they're also destructive. In other words, when you apply a LUT, you may lose some values. For example, clipping may occur. There are actually three different types of LUTs, and let's talk about those briefly. There are technical LUTs, which simply transform from one color space to another. So those are very common. There are also aesthetic LUTs. And aesthetic LUTs are applied simply to create a certain aesthetic look. Maybe you want all your footage to look like film noir or be very bright and saturated. Well, you can apply aesthetic LUT just to give yourself a look. And these are also called looks. The third type of LUT is a camera LUT, and that merges the functionality of a technical LUT and an aesthetic LUT. The camera LUTs are applied in camera as the footage is shot. However, you can apply a camera LUT in Resolve at a later stage so that the camera footage is interpreted correctly. So those are three types of LUTs, technical, aesthetic, and camera, that are used quite often when using a display referred color management system. Again, though, the disadvantage is they're destructive. Now you can still use a display referred system and avoid a LUT if you use a CLT instead. And if you're using Resolve, you can use a DCTL, where the D stands for DaVinci. Now we're going to use LUTs and DCTLs in later videos. But keep in mind a display referred color management system almost always requires a LUT or a CTL. So how does that compare to a scene referred system? Well, a scene referred color management system attempts to keep all the color values in scene space. That is, the system works with linear light values as were captured by the camera sensor. And a linear light value is one that has not had gamma correction applied to it or some other correction. And gamma correction is common with digital systems, and it's basically a power function that's applied to make the contrast look correct for human vision. So what are the advantages of that scene-referred system? Well, the good thing is the color transformations are handled by the program itself. So in other words, you don't have to apply LUTs or CLTs. The program does it for you. This makes it much easier for the user who's using Resolve or the colorist. A scene-referred system tends to work better with multiple formats. In other words, if you bring in footage from multiple cameras, it's much easier to work with. So when you are using Resolve and it's time to decide what color management to use, you basically have three workflow options. And you can choose these through the project settings. Let's take a look at that real quick. I'm going to use my shortcut to go to project settings, and that's the gear at the bottom right. Click that button. Go to the color management tab. You can see that the color management is handled by the color science menu. The default DaVinci YRGB is actually a display-referred system. However, you can change the menu to two other major scene-referred systems. The first scene-referred system is DaVinci RYGB Color Managed. This is also called RCM. The second scene-referred system is ACES, and there's two variants of that, ACES CC and ACES CCT. And ACES is the Academy standard. We're going to work with all these systems. In the next video, we'll discuss display-referred, and in later videos, we'll discuss RCM and ACES.